Exactly a month from now, the Congressional Supercommittee is supposed to have a deal as to how to cut the deficit, but so far there has been little sign of progress. If the Supercommittee can't come up with a plan, then more than $1 trillion in across-the-board cuts will kick in. With me this morning, Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. He is vice chairman of the Senate Republican Conference and joins us from our New York studios today. Senator, welcome to In Business.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so glad you're here, but why is the Supercommittee so silent?
Well, the Supercommittee continues to work. They're meeting all of this week, next week, last week. They have till Thanksgiving to come up with recommendations. But I will tell you, as a Republican, as a conservative, our problem in this country is not that we're taxed too little, it's that we spend too much, and this committee needs to put all of its focus and attention on getting the spending under control. We can't continue to borrow like we have. Today, we're going to borrow $4 billion, a lot of it from overseas, significant borrowing from China. It's very hard to stay a strong and independent and leader of the world with that kind of debt.
Well, do you have a degree of confidence that the U.S. won't face another credit downgrade?
You want to make sure that the Supercommittee does the work that gives the confidence to the markets at home and overseas that we are serious about getting our debt under control. The big problem is the debt, and it's because we spend more than we take in. American families in my home state of Wyoming, understand you can't spend more than you make. And it's time for Washington to get that message as well. You know, ultimately, we need a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. And someone said, oh, that's just a gimmick. I will tell you, Margaret, if it were a gimmick, Congress would have passed it a long time ago. We need to live within our means, and this committee is just one step in the process to get our financial house in order.
Sir, you're the vice chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. I mean, if the Supercommittee comes back with a plan that includes some form of new revenue, can you get support for that?
Every senator, every member of the House is going to have to make their own decision on how to vote, Margaret. The way to raise revenue in this country is to get people back to work. We have 14 million Americans out of work. We have a government on a regulatory rampage, putting regulations, making it harder and more expensive for the private sector to create jobs. I mean, even just the Dodd-Frank, the Volcker component of that, 11 pages of the big Dodd-Frank bill, and they've come up with hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulations. They say it's going to take about 6 million hours of work in businesses across the country just to comply with those new regulations that are coming out of Dodd-Frank regarding the Volcker rule that apparently Volcker doesn't even recognize anymore.
All right, but the Treasury Department out today with a post on their website directly addressing this question of regulation and saying if regulation were truly such a steep impediment that you wouldn't see corporate profits like we're seeing this earnings season, that you wouldn't see so much cash on the balance sheets if it were keeping business and transactions from happening. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty out there across the country. I visit with business owners all of the time, and they're concerned about the significant costs of the Obama health care law and what those costs are going to be to their businesses, the continued threats by the president to raise taxes. And when you realize who he wants to go after right now with tax increases, those are the job creators in this country. 4 out of 5 of those that he's after are those that, by definition of the U.S. Treasury Department, are business owners, large and small business owners, the job creators, and regulations is a very large part of it. The president talks about cutting the red tape, and he proposed about $4 billion in cuts over 5 years. But this last month alone, this administration, with its new expensive regulations, is about $9 billion of additional regulations on top of the $9 billion from August and the $9 billion from July.
Well, today the administration out with a plan that would allow for more refinancing in a way that would ease qualifying requirements. So what do you think of the FHFA plan out today? I'm
going to want to look at the specific details, but Margaret, the president promised 3 years ago that he was going to deal with and provide relief for about 9 million people who were looking for that sort of help. At this point, it's been less than 2 million 3 years later. I mean, it's not a surprise that the confidence in this administration and the president's policies has dropped. I mean, the president has taken a bad situation and he has made it worse. With what's coming out of the policies of this White House, they're making it harder and more expensive to create jobs.
Senator, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Margaret.